It's episode 4 of Vinny Makes the Hall of Fame Case for ... And we've got Vinny Lospinuso, the resident Hall of Fame expert who probably knows more about Halls of Fame than anyone I've ever met. How you doing, brother?
What's up? Not much. Well, the ceiling's up above my head, but other than that, can't really complain much. September's winding down, October's coming up, and fall has just begun. And another day, another dollar, and another day, another time I get to look up and talk about the Hall of Fame with you, of course, over Zoom.
Absolutely. And you mentioned fall. So what better choice that you made? You always make these choices, and you've got a great one that I'm really looking forward to seeing your presentation on. Ralph Hay, a name that is not known to a whole lot of people, but it really should be.
Yeah, Ralph Hay, in my honest opinion. Now, for those that know me, and know me especially on Twitter, I'm a huge advocate for contributors. There are some people say, oh, we don't need more contributors. I'm the kind of person that says, I can think of 60 deserving contributors that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame right now.
Would this be your number one guy?
Yes. And out of all the people that I consider to be deserving contributors for Canton, out of all the people I've mentioned, there is one person that has to be above the rest. And what better person to be my number one most wanted contributor than Mr. Ralph Hay, the founder of the NFL.
And that's really the interesting thing. When you look at people who have actually founded leagues, they're all pretty much in their respective halls of fame. With Ralph Hay, he's the victim of a very brief career. I would say. So for those who are not aware of who he is, Ralph Hay bought the Canton Bulldogs in 1917. This is when he was, I think he was only 27, if I read that correctly.
Yeah, he was 27 years old when it was actually 1918. It was during, the Spanish flu pandemic, and that's when he acquired Jack Cusack, who was the owner of the Bulldogs at the time. He's another guy I think deserves to be in the Hall of Fame himself because, short time, but also very dominant. But Cusack was looking to, sell his team, and he comes across this young businessman by the name of Ralph Edward Hay, full name. And he says, sure. And when Cusack went back to Oklahoma to be a part of the oil industry, Hay said, you know what? I have my nice little car business here, and I also really love football. It's something I could see prospering up even more. This is a really quality team. I can see if I can make this winner into more of a winner, and I'm going to see if I can win multiple championships with this team as it did before with the Cusack ownership. And that's what he did. Though he did get what he wanted. The team won games. The team even won an Ohio League championship in 1919. That was their 4th ever championship as an organization. But the downside is that, because football itself was not as popular during that time, it just didn't really sell well. And because of that, he lost a lot of money. And because, also during that time, unlike 1920s on, where a lot of teams didn't have fixed stakes, and they didn't really stay with one team. They're usually like, shorter term contracts where they go from team to team. And so he said, the Ohio League has been really good, but it's not really formed together as well as it could be. Yeah, and that was the same.
And I think we should sort of like paint that picture of what the sporting landscape was in the late teens. So like over 100 years ago. I read a quote, I don't know if that was accurate or whether it was hearsay, but Ralph's envisioned that one day pro football could be as big as baseball. And when you look at the sporting landscape of the late teens, you had one real national organization. It hadn't expanded westward yet, but that would be Major League Baseball.
They didn't move westward until later on in like the
Right.
50s.
But it was still the top American sport by far, team sport anyway. Hockey was like the modern NHL formed in 1917, but unless you were in New York, Boston, Chicago, or Detroit, you didn't give a shit. Which was pretty much the case for, God, decades after.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basketball there was nothing there. But football, while it was pretty big collegiately, which is really fascinating when you think about how many great college players of the 20s just said, I'm good. I don't feel like playing pro football.
Yeah, I think honestly that's another big reason as to why still like years later there's still zero people. Like I said in the Charles Follis video, that's a big reason why there's still to this day zero people from that 30-year history of professional football. And again, that really needs to be changed, because Ralph Hay knew that there was a lot of talent there, both from the player side, the contributor side, and the coaching side. But the reason as to why a lot of these people didn't get this attention was because football was a much smaller sport, and a lot of people didn't go pro after they finished it collegiately just because it wasn't that popular. And I think that is a big reason as to why Hay doesn't really get as much attention. There's other factors too, but that's definitely a major part of it. And that is a wrong that needs to be corrected. It really has to. But the question I really have is he was the one that, because of the salaries of the players, they wanted bigger salaries. They put their bodies on the line. Remember, it was a much, much more violent game back then. I understand people always keep saying, oh, the league's ain't soft. Listen, if you think the league was soft, people from back then would have called the league that you grew up with soft, and so on and so forth. Because back in like the very early days, sometimes people actually killed each other. And that's what led to the increase of the forward pass by Theodore Roosevelt, actually, which led to eventually the modern game that we see today. So yeah, that's a little history lesson on the NFL itself and also professional football. But what really matters is them actually founding this league. And they spoke to Jim Thorpe about it, and he spoke to also Leo Lyons, another guy who I think should be in the Hall of Fame. And so they decided, all these owners of the Ohio League and a couple teams in Western New York, decided to have a meeting on Friday, August 20th, 1920.
It was 10 representatives, I believe, right? Because
it was 10. It was the Akron Pros, the Canton Bulldogs, the Cleveland Indians, not the baseball team, the Dayton Triangles, the Decatur Staleys, that's the Bears, the Hammond Pros, the Massillon Tigers, the Muncie Flyers, the Ranson Cardinals, that's the Arizona Cardinals today, the Rochester Jeffersons, and the Rock Island Independents. So that was 11 teams that were a part of that. 2 of them are still active today. In case you're curious where the Packers are, they didn't come into the league until a year later.
Yeah, and this was his brainchild. And I think pro football would have eventually or maybe it wouldn't have. Who's to say? But this was the first forming of this idea. Like, if there was any past historical figure, I think, in sports that I'd almost want to sort of like resurrect for a day, just so we could see what his idea turned into. Ralph Hay is about as good a choice as any.
Oh yeah. So, but what's even more interesting about Ralph Hay is just where it started. Now, I want to ask you, Kirk.
Sure.
Where do you think they met in Canton when the NFL started? Where do you think they met?
Well, actually, no. I read this answer. It's at his auto dealership.
Indeed, and the reason why they did that was because of the number of people that showed up. They didn't have enough room, so they went to his auto dealership, in his showroom, and they all sat on cardboards because of the lack of seats. And yeah, he's the reason why everyone came together. He's the reason. He created the idea of what the NFL would become. And again, if it wasn't for Ralph Hay, the NFL as we know it would not exist. And the Bulldogs were still won a couple championships afterwards. But he decided to sell the team in 1923.
Not because he didn't love it, though, just because he was just losing too much money. He couldn't
He
keep it
was
up.
losing money, and also if it wasn't for Ralph Hay and the success of the Bulldogs of the Ohio League, um, the Hall of Fame would not be in Canton. It was very close to going to Latrobe, Pennsylvania, which is the actual birthplace of pro football. It's not Canton, Ohio. It's Latrobe, Pennsylvania. It was 30 years prior. The reason why you just say that is that's just where the NFL was founded. But the ironic thing about it is, like, and they have like an award given to Ralph Hay for pioneers, but I don't really like that honor because, like, you barely see it out, and you might as well just see those people that they give that honor in the Hall of Fame, like guys I mentioned before, like Fred Gerke and Joe Brown, and a few other people. Arch Ward is another one that comes to mind. I think might have gotten it at one point. But he was very close to making it in 1920, and in 2020. I think Joe Horrigan, he was one of the selectors. He said, "Oh, the reason why we didn't do it was because of the length of time he was there." And to that I say, who cares?
I agree.
Who cares? Like, seriously, you guys, like, it's called the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Everyone mentions how the league was founded in 1920.
In
Okay.
Canton, Ohio.
Yeah, even though it's Latrobe, but that's another story.
Right.
Wouldn't it be nice if you're going to mention that narrative over and over and over and over and over again? Wouldn't it be nice to finally give the person that made that possible his due? I mean, you keep saying it all the time. Don't you want to actually do it? Like, seriously, guys. Like, come on. Like, I understand these people. It honestly feels insulting to Ralph Hay and also the city of Canton if you say until you're blue in the face that he's the reason why the league exists. He's the reason why everything you see right here is before you. If he's the reason behind anything, that's a pretty remarkable legacy. And yeah, his time in the league was short, but he didn't leave because he didn't feel like it. He was losing money. What did you want him to do? Go bankrupt? Would that be enough for you guys? Would you want him to go bankrupt? Would that do it enough for you? Like, seriously, like, do you really need to shift the goalpost that much? Like, it's simple. I've spoken to every single person that don't know anything about the game, and every single one of them say he's deserving.
Yeah.
Every single one of them.
I think also a selfless act also probably kept him out, because the biggest reason I think you and I can agree that he's not in is the brevity of his career in pro football.
Yeah.
Second thing, I just learned this about today as I was sort of prepping for the show. They asked him to be the first president of the league, which he turned down in favor of Jim Thorpe.
Yes.
Because he thought, and probably accurately so, that the Thorpe name would help sell the product. Now, Thorpe, unfortunately, he only lasted in that capacity for 1 year because that's just not what he was meant to do.
He was also a player and a coach too. Remember, a lot of people were able to do multiple roles more so
Right.
during that time.
But from what I understand, even by Thorpe's own admission, he was probably not the best person for that role. Had Ralph Hay taken that on, conceivably, he could have been involved in football he passed away, what, 54? Or was he 54 when he died? No.
He died at the age of 54 in 1961. He died rather young too. He died a couple of years before the Hall of Fame was even created.
Right.
So he never even got to see the fruits of his labor truly unfold. And, I could say it's a shame, but I could say it all I want. It's just, the guy founded this stuff when he was in his late 20s, early 30s, and had to get out because he needed money. That's a big reason why a lot of these guys in the early days had to retire earlier. The reason why he had shorter careers was not because they didn't like the game as much. It's because, as much as you want to say it or not, it's a business, guys. It's a goddamn business. And do you want him to lose all the money? I mean, yeah, you can say about your all pros and whatnot, but what's going to matter more to an actual person? The all pros that a couple journalists give them, or the actual money that they need to pay their bills? I'm going to go with the latter option. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I think it's just like the more I've been learning about him, the more this is one of the biggest snubs really that I can think of. And again, had he sort of taken on that role, when did Joe Carr take over? Who's in the Pro Football?
Joe Carr took over in like the mid-20s, I think.
Okay,
like
I think
24.
So again, conceivably, this could have gone a completely different route. Possibly under Hay, football might have accelerated its growth. Possibly, again, that's conjecture. Obviously, we don't know. But
Everyone can have their what ifs, but in reality, no one knows. People are just guessing.
yeah, this to me is really a no-brainer. I'm trying to remember. He was on the Centennial slate class.
Yeah,
Right?
I said that the contributors that were named were, Paul Tagliabue, George Young, and Steve Sable. And the reason as to why Hay missed it was because I think it might have been Horgan that wasn't big on him for some reason. And he said like, oh, because he had a shorter career. Again, money, that's one thing.
Mhm.
And two, short or not, he's the reason why all you guys are there in the first place.
Yeah, I think another factor maybe that does play into it. The Canton Bulldogs did not survive.
They died in the they ceased operations in the mid-20s. Even though they did win they won like what, six championships, 4 in the Ohio League and then 2 in the NFL. Like, they were a very successful team. I mean, the only other team in the early in the pre-NFL days were even close to as good, and their big rival was the Massillon Tigers, and the Tigers still have a total of 0 people in the Hall of Fame despite winning 6 championships.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that also goes back to stuff that we've said. I think let's say, because pro football was never going to survive in Canton just because of the size of that city. And the only one that ever made that was Green Bay, just through not fluke, but through a structure that allowed them to be successful.
And just the people that founded the Packers too, like, honestly, like, again, I'm not going to be a broken record. The people that also helped make the Green Bay Packers who they are also deserve some recognition too, but that's a whole nother video. But again, with Ralph Hay, it's just like, I'm seeing like some people that try to argue that, oh, they had their chance in 2020. Let's try to put another thing. That's just nonsense, guys. Seriously, like, you're gonna say that, oh, this was their chance. Now let's move on. No.
I hate that argument too. It's like, well, you had a chance and you blew it. Well, okay, no, you had a chance decided on by 48 other people. It's not like you're going to the Super Bowl and then you don't get there again. Well, you had your chance and you blew it. That's when you can use that line.
Yeah, you could do it as many times as you want, but not only that, it's like the same argument you saw people, they were complaining. Listen, the same people were also saying that were complaining that Tom Flores didn't make it. You still put him in the following year. So I don't know what's holding you back from putting Ralph Hay. Was it because you actually remember seeing Tom Flores in person? Is because he's still alive? Is it because that when you're
David
dead?
Baker can't knock on the coffin.
Actually, in theory, he could, considering it is in Canton. He can just dig it up and just, hello.
You could. If anyone could probably do that with his bare hands, it'd be David Baker.
It would, considering he's, I can just see him like picking up the coffin and just saying, "Hey, Ralph."
Like, I came, the biggest shock of my life, not the biggest shock of my life. One of the bigger shocks of my life was learning that David Baker did not play pro football. Look at this guy. I don't think so.
Yeah. That's news to me. Even when he was in like high school, like, he's a big dude.
Well, maybe he did in high school. I'm pretty sure he didn't play pro football.
Well, he definitely didn't play pro football. I know that he was also the commissioner of the Arena Football League for a long time.
So anyway, that's I think this concludes this. So if you haven't sort of looked up some more information on Ralph Hay, do so. And
they need to put it in. And I know that there's other people that say, oh, forget owners. Listen, the only people that are upset with the idea of owners getting in are, not to be on the political side here, but people that just don't like people that have money.
Well,
and I hate being that kind of a person. I take that back. Actually, Ralph Hay died in 1944 at the age of 53, like way before that. But
okay.
But yeah, a bit of a misnomer there. But I'm thinking about the Hall of Fame, like when it was selected. Never mind. But I'm saying that when in general, when it comes to when it comes to someone like Ralph Hay, ignoring him for another year, despite everything you've done, if you're going to say all these words, at least practice what you preach. And the more you keep saying no to Ralph Hay, the more it shows that you care about that term more for promotional reasons as opposed to actual reasons. I don't care how long it is, but
Yeah, I
put him in
think
center.
what is sort of sad, he should have really got in on the 2020, because if anyone of those people deserved to have gotten in on the 100th anniversary of the whole celebration of the league, it's the guy who thought of it in the first place.
Do you find it funny how like some of the voters that wasn't on that committee complain about that, even though those same people that are complaining had a chance themselves to put in Ralph Hay for
Well,
all these years and never did it once? So yeah, gotta put that foot in your mouth, I see.
oh, see, they could have tried. We don't know what goes on in those.
They could be more transparent about it. If they tried, let us know. But if
Sure,
they're not,
but but to be fair, Vinny, they don't have to tell us anything at all.
yeah, but that shows them about it tells them a lot about their character, if anything, doesn't it?
Suppose. So I guess we'll close off with this. Vinny is going to be a part of our other group committee that we're having, and it's an open committee. We are transparent. We are going to do our mock committee probably, I'm thinking the third Tuesday of October, not sure yet. And if you want to be a part of it, somebody just emailed me today who's following us on Twitter, says they want to be a part of that. Absolutely. Representing the Falcons fan base, I believe, because he's from Atlanta. And if you want to sort of like help out with that, yes, we're not actually putting anyone in, but it's a hell of a lot of fun. And it's some good people talking about what we all love, the Hall of Fame. Thanks again for listening. Stay safe, everybody.
Take care.